happy last year's Christmas. Hi everyone, I am Tom Davison, and again I'm running for VP Financial. As your FVP, there are three major goals I want to accomplish. One of them, I want to create a societal funding precedent based on previous years for consistent and realistic ambitions in regards to funding. This would be done by creating and maintaining a budget that reflects societal funding throughout the year, expressed as an online public spreadsheet, breaking down the money going to the different societies, and would be organized based off of things like society size and the amount of funding that each society gets. I believe that this will allow for better communication and transparency between the societies, the union, and the general student body. Secondly, I want to prioritize a unified levy policy, allowing for appropriate opt-in and opt-out procedures for the levied societies. In my first few weeks of office, I plan to update and fix the levy on the watch through a referendum. This would allow for the watch to be given money which has been legally ignored and mishandled for a long time. Through a referendum, I will ensure the correct allocation of money and that the watch and the KSU are in good standing with each other moving forward. After doing this, I will be using the updated watch levy as a framework for my unified levy policy, which will be done by the end of my term as your FVP. And thirdly, I want to focus on the task at hand, just handling just the money involved with the KSU, and I will be handling this money extremely well. I will make sure everyone has access to this information. I will create and maintain a budget that reflects societal funding throughout the year, again, online and in a spreadsheet, which this thing does not currently exist. This spreadsheet will break down where the money is going and why it's going there. This will bring about better communication and transparency, again, with the societies, the union, and the student body. I'm not running for SLVP, CVP, or even EVP. I'm here to be the FVP, to efficiently manage your money in a transparent and effective manner. My platform represents this through concentrating on removing some of the obscurity and vagueness surrounding the union's finances and financial policies. Students and societies should know where the money is being spent and by whom. Students should have easy access to this information about how our levied societies are spending their money, and students should be aware of and have accessible avenues to opt out of these levies if they wish. Finally, I've been around for 4 years. I've been involved with societies, activities, and athletics here at King's, as I'm a host student and a member of the King's rugby team. I believe that my years here and all the experiences I have had are an asset. I'm not here to climb political ladders, I'm here to right the wrongs. I'm Tom Davison, and I want to be your FVP.
This is the best way to start. Okay. I just like go back.
Yeah.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Aidan, and as stated, I am still running for Financial Vice President. I want to start my speech off on a bit of a cheery note by saying that it's no secret that our university is in financial difficulty. And this year, more than ever, we need a strong voice representing students. So, what does the Financial Vice President do? The Financial Vice President is the only student representative on committees such as the Budget Advisory Committee. The Budget Advisory Committee, as you can probably tell from the name, is a university body that manages the budget, which is a challenging task in our current financial state. I see next year as being a time where the Financial Vice President must take leadership in advocating for students' rights. So what would I do for you on these committees? From my experience on the Board of Governors, I know that it is in tough times the university looks to students to make up for a lack of funds. Although it is important to be reasonable, I already know through conversation with classmates how these fees negatively impact the experience of our students. Increases to student fees are not the only tough decisions being made. I was actively involved in the letter writing campaign where students wrote in when the positions of the sessional professors were threatened. I was able to take these letters to the administration and show them how cuts to the student budget directly affect these students. Now, one of the key recommendations of the College Task Force is to keep those positions. I see this as an example of how I can take my experience as a board rep and transfer it to the experience as FVP. So while the Financial Vice President does play an important role with the university's finances, Its main job is to deal with the union itself and the union's finances. Being a council member, I have seen the work that Emily puts into union finances and how that does have a direct impact on students. I want to prioritize communication so that students know what the union has to offer them. One of the ways I see students most benefiting is through society funding. I want to expand workshops with society executives so it's understood how to properly fill out a funding request and answer any questions that they have and how money can be accessed easiest. I also want to work with Emily and Alex, the current executives, to develop effective midterm check-ins with societies to make sure that everyone is being supported in the ways that they need. Having been part of the Dance Collective in the past 2 years, I know personally how work with the financial vice president can directly enrich student life. Through discussion and costing things out, we managed to purchase ballet bars, and I just heard today that our speakers just came in for our dance space. Financial responsibility is absolutely important. However, I know that the union's money is the students' money, and I want to make sure that it's directly benefiting them. One of the most rewarding things that happened on council this year was when we got to send 2 students to the Canadian Undergraduate Physics Conference in Kingston. Every term, the KSU provides $1,000 in travel bursaries for students. I want to look into increasing the travel bursary budget line and making sure that students are aware of the support that they do have to do the amazing work that they do at King's and to be able to tell the world about it. Well, these are examples of what I want to do to create spaces for communication. I also like to think that I'm a friendly and approachable person, and I want to be open for questions at any time. These past 3 summers, I've worked with 6-year-olds, and I truly believe that no question is a stupid question. I believe in face-to-face conversations are the best way to make sure things are clear, and I want to make myself present and available for help. The last thing I want to talk about isn't really a part of my platform, but something I want to integrate into everything I do. The union does do a lot of great work around equity issues, and I recognize that this cannot be excluded from the realms of finance. This year, Emily worked on a consent day with the external vice president, and just yesterday in council, we passed a funding request to support Pride in their letter writing campaign to combat transphobia in Canadian law. These are very real examples of how the financial vice president can financially empower marginalized identities on campus to make change in the broader community. I'm interested in not just providing money, but working with groups in other capacities in terms of my presence and time and figuring out how best to support them. I want to make sure that I myself am challenging oppression while recognizing my own places of privilege in meetings that I attend and in people who I work with. I know that a lot of the time, the financial vice president is crunching numbers and writing checks, but I didn't take university calculus for nothing. I do truly believe that being financial vice president is so much more than numbers. I love the King's community, and I would love to be able to support it in the capacity of financial vice president.
Whenever you're good. Okay. Hi, I'm Nuala, and I'm running for Financial Vice President. So this is a position that I'm extremely passionate about and qualified for, as I'm experienced, committed, responsible, and determined. So this past year, I was elected to sit on the union's finance committee. So I have been witness to a lot of the student union's financial decision making, and this is something that I would definitely bring to the position. In a time of financial difficulty, the 2015-2016 school year is one where fiscal responsibility is going to have to be an absolute priority for the university. So if elected, I will rally for the protection of beloved professors. So it's been talked about in response to the debt to get rid of some sessional professors or to increase tuition, which are both things that I think are absolutely unacceptable. Enrollment is actually really steadily decreasing. FIP in the last year dropped 20% in its enrollment numbers, and I understand that intimate class sizes are great, but when the options are between getting rid of professors or increasing tuition, I think that we really need to focus on increasing enrollment. So if elected, I will commit to increasing enrollment and using students to do this. So a lot of universities have liaisons between the universities and high schools, and I think that this is a great resource that we don't utilize as fully as we could. King's is such a unique institution, but so many people don't actually know about it. So I want to focus on using our students to use social media and go back to their high schools and talk about what an amazing school that we have. Enrollment actually generates 90% of the operating revenue of the university, so I really want to focus on bringing the numbers back up to where they're intended to be. If elected, I will also work to ensure that the fiscal difficulties are not met with tuition increases. So as demonstrated by the Day of Action, tuition is already so high to a point where students are working extra jobs, they're suffering from mental health illness, and this is we're not allowed to be students anymore. We can't just focus on our studies. So I want to make sure that I continue to fight for increased government funding and support for university students, because increasing tuition is, while it may very momentarily give the university a bit more money, it's going to ultimately drive students away, which is something that we can't afford. If elected, I also really want to focus on increasing communications between societies and the student union. So after sitting on the finance committee this year, I have seen that there is some problematic communication. Societies request money and they don't always know how to do it. So we get funding requests from people that haven't done quite enough research, or they're requesting retroactive funding. So they're asking for money that they've already spent, which means that we can't give them anything. And we actually have a really great society budget, so I want to use it to support the students and make sure that they properly know how to request money so that we can give it to them. I propose to do this. There is a society training day where ratified societies meet with the vice president, financial vice president, and the president, and I want to make sure that there's a lot of time spent on going over the funding request process and having an open dialogue, so if they have any suggestions on how to improve the process, I definitely want to take that into account. Finally, I want to work with students on ancillary fees. So we do have a lot of fees on top of tuition, and it's actually been recommended by the college task force that we get rid of a technology fee, which is $100 for next year, which I support. But I want to work with students to kind of see what they think is important so that they know where their money is going and hopefully have some say in how it's going to be spent. So ultimately, if elected, I just really want to work for the students and with the students to represent them as much as I possibly can, and I promise to work towards a student money management. Thank you.
We'll take some questions. Okay, I'll go with that now.
How do you see yourselves representing students on the budget advisory committee, and how will you sort of fill students in on the kind of discussions that are happening at that level?
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely want to make sure that there was always open communication between myself and the students, because finances are, we're getting money from the students and they need to know where it's going. The FEP would have office hours, so I would definitely want to publicize those and make sure people knew that they could always come talk to me. But I would also be interested in making a Facebook page for the kind of finances of King's, posting what's going on, and pages where people can follow so they'll get updates and they would have an opportunity to ask questions, so there could be a bit of a dialogue going on between, which I think is really important.
Okay, so this past year I was Board of Governors representative, and this was absolutely a huge component of my job, was educating students on what was going on with their financial crisis and hearing what they had to say and bringing that to an administration level. So something I absolutely found work this year is open consultation. So whether it is a town hall, whether it is a fact sheet breaking it down, the fact is that a lot of King students aren't so comfortable with numbers and don't quite understand what is going down. So being able to simplify that and explain it allows it to be more accessible to everyone. I also feel like I'm in tune with the values of the membership, and I really do believe that that will allow me to hit the ground running and advocate for students and the need for reduction of student fees the minute that I would enter that type of room.
Yeah, I completely agree with office hours in the Facebook group. I feel like if the students actually had a bit more information to go on, I think that they're not too shy away from the numbers. I think that the students that want to know are going to look for it, and the current way that it is, they can't find it because it's not posted online. It's hard to get to. I had trouble finding the budget. It's not out there. People are looking for it, and I think that if we had a solid breakdown of where the numbers are, how they're sort of representing the students as a whole, they would be able to come in with some information and get better answers than what they're getting right now.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I have a question for Tom, if that's okay. You mentioned in your speech that you were looking to right the wrongs. So I was wondering if maybe you could lay out what your concrete plan is briefly for doing that.
Sort of righting the wrongs of the bad blood between KSU and the watch that has kind of festered over the past few years. So with the watch, actually I have it written down. So with it, I just want to create a unified levy policy. So that would help with, like, I've heard a lot of people on the watch that want the levy released. I don't think that's a solid idea. I think that'll be the end of the watch. When it comes down to it, the watch levy is kind of outdated. From the way that I see it, it's from the 90s. It's been ignored. It's little legalities have been ignored. They haven't fully gotten along with the KSU, and I want to fix that. I want to nitpick in the policies that have been signed from the 90s and see if there's a better way to have a levy, have this agreement with the KSU and the watch, so that way they'd be able to get paid for not only this year but also next year.
Emily, would you feel comfortable? Could I speak to that?
Yeah.
So it's been my understanding that the current executive has been tasked to update this levy policy. What happened is basically the levy policy has not been updated, though it has been worked on throughout this year. The fact is that policies are made so we can remain transparent to our students, but not made to impose difficulties. So I'm looking forward in the future to working with the new levy policies and working with the levy societies so we can have clear communication and a great year next year.
I just think, communication is really important, making sure that we work with the levy societies, as Aidan was saying, and including them in the decision-making process. So moving forward, everyone just feels like their needs are being met.
Whoa, okay. I'll do Jesse and then Jacob and then Kate. Okay.
Question for you two. Most of the big decisions that are involving sectional staff members, budget cuts, and ancillary going up or down, tuition going up or down, with regards to journalism, which is currently regulated itself. Most of those final decisions are made at the board level. So I'm wondering why both of you put so much weight into that in respective campaigns and speeches, when that actually falls directly under the purview of the president, law reps,
Was that for?
It was for the two of us, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, this year, as the finances are becoming more difficult, the financial VP was actually on the college task force, which made a lot of recommendations to the board. While it may not directly be in my power, I think that the students do need somebody really strong to represent their desires financially. And if I were I'm assuming there would be another kind of board similar to the college task force that would keep working with the administration towards a better financial situation. I think that there needs to be a strong voice that does support all of the things I outlined in my speech, and there needs to be somebody that we would be communicating with kind of a higher power in times of financial difficulty. So while it may not seem so relevant, I think that I still would be speaking to this.
I just want to clarify that the Budget Advisory Committee and University Finance Committee are committees of the board, so they are tasked to basically do the background financial work and then recommend to the board. And during my time as Board of Governors rep, I have never seen a recommendation that has been recommended by these committees ever be shot down. So I understand that work in student representation and making sure that students' values are heard happens behind the scenes, and when it gets to the board level, unfortunately, sometimes it feels like it's already been decided. And the ratios are also very different. On the board level, we have about 3 student representatives to about 30, while a budget advisory committee, there's probably about 7 to 1.
I have a question sort of about honoraria. The union, the King's is tiny, and the union is tiny, and as a result, as a union, we don't have a lot of money. And our executive honoraria, just to use them as an example, are relatively, compared to other student unions, very, very low. And just generally, considering the amount of time that the executive put into their jobs, not very much money for the work that they do, which means that those positions are very inaccessible to a lot of students. Students who have to take out loans or work 3 jobs to support themselves while in school can't be a part of student government because they can't afford to. And so I'm wondering what you'll do as financial vice president to make those sorts of positions in the union more accessible to all students so that elected positions like the ones you're running for are really open to everybody.
I think it comes down to them being aware that they are capable I think that there's a lot that needs to be clarified when it comes down to the finances of this. And I just kind of brought out the budget to see if I could find the honoraria. Could you possibly repeat the second half of that, if you remember that?
Like what they are?
Yeah.
They're $4,400 each for the year for the 5 executive.
Okay. Could I come back and just try to find it? No. At this time, I don't have an appropriate answer for you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that accessibility to the union is absolutely something that we need to be thinking about in tandem with accessibility to our university. I mean, the reason that students aren't able to participate in these types of positions is because of the incredibly high upfront cost of accessing our university. So I think absolutely it is going to be a two-pronged effect with reducing the upfront cost, but then also discussing how people can be involved in a union beyond elected positions. The fact is we do have a finance committee, we do have multiple committees that are nominated. However, I totally agree with you, Jacob, in that these are positions where there is a lot of work and they are not paid a lot. And I think that we should absolutely look into making sure that all of our positions around campus, whether it is the galley, the wardroom, or the bookstore, are being paid fair amounts. And if that's a discussion that students want to have and need to have, then I would be more than open to holding an open discussion about student work and student wages. And maybe that means that there's a referendum in the future to increase those.
Just kind of coming a little bit off that, I think it's really important to just include students in the decision-making process. So as I was saying before, we do have a pretty big society budget. So if we talked to the students and found that this was something that they were really passionate about and wanted to make sure that these positions were accessible, we could look at restructuring some of the money, like maybe take some of the money we would usually give to fund society events to like executive honoraria. We would definitely have to look at kind of precedent and also like other universities and what they usually do, but maybe kind of reconsidering and including the students definitely in that decision making.
Okay, so we'll take one last question, which is Kate's, and yeah.
I was wondering if you had any ideas to increase financial literacy of students, specifically with first years going to second year, living on their own, and who don't know how to fill out the tax form, don't know how to budget properly, and so that they can easily handle their finances.
I think that looking into holding some like information sessions would definitely be really valuable. I was looking at a lot of kind of the reports online, and they are really confusing and they are hard to get through, and some of them are 15 pages and they take a lot of time. So I think that kind of providing student support and maybe even looking to outside support. I know that there was kind of a housing information session earlier on in the year where we got somebody from outside to talk to us about what to do about houses next year. So kind of looking to outside support also to help students with financial literacy is something I would definitely consider.
Yeah, something I've noticed on the union is that no one really just does their job. They really do absolutely help out in other capacities. So in the past, a lot of different executives and everyone on council has helped first-year reps in order to facilitate information sessions, like how to budget or what is reasonable rent. I think that absolutely holding those is something that we can look into in the future. In terms of increasing financial literacy, I find that simplified budgets often help. However, with the understanding that the full budget is available. Also, presentations are often super helpful. I've recently discovered those, and in general, fact sheets. But then also just being available and accessible to sit down and talk about okay, what does this mean, or how much does one usually spend on food? Yeah, that sort of stuff.
I completely agree. I also think that constant workshops throughout the year, especially for the first years, would aid in their literacy towards financial and budget. So I completely agree. I think that it needs to be a bit more consistent. It shouldn't just be at the beginning of the year or halfway through the year. I think when people start looking for housing, start looking properly, do their tax returns, stuff like that, I think that they need to be engaged consistently, learning. It's a process to learn how to do all this. You don't learn it overnight. So I think that consistent workshops would definitely benefit.
Okay, great. Thank you guys so much.